For centuries, the lost treasure of the Knights Templar has been treated like a legend, buried gold, sacred relics, even the Holy Grail. But according to Tim Hogan, he believes the treasure was never truly lost. It was just hidden, and then eventually moved. And eventually, it may have been brought to the land that would become the United States of America. Today, Tim takes us from the fall of the Knights Templar to Oak Island, the Freemasons, the Founding Fathers, and the possibility that America itself was built around a secret inheritance from the ancient world. I mean, we're talking Thomas Jefferson, Lewis and Clark, Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, and the vision of America as a new Atlantis, a nation designed not only as a political experiment, but as a protected home for hidden knowledge. According to Tim, somewhere in the United States right now, there may still be 2 concealed vaults. And what they contain could go far beyond just material wealth. We're talking 6 ancient Arks of the Covenant, lost religious texts, sacred objects, records capable of changing what we believe about the Templars, the origins of America, and perhaps human history itself. Tim even suggests that people guarding this knowledge may already know where these vaults are, and that the question is no longer whether they will be opened, but when. So today we're asking, did the Knights Templar help shape the founding of America? Is their treasure still hidden beneath American soil, potentially even in the Capitol? And are we approaching the moment when the Arks are finally to be revealed? Well, if you are curious about the answer to these questions and many, many more, this is the episode for you. So sit back, relax, and welcome to camp. Now, where are the Arks now, or where's the Holy Grail now?
Yeah, there are 6 Arks that the Templar Order currently has. We have them in vaults here in the United States. We have 2 vaults. We originally had 7 vaults at one point in time. We had to, one of which was at Dog Island, which is now known as where the Money Pit is. If you've seen the show Oak Island. Mm-hmm. So there's a show called Oak Island where it's been on for forever now, but where they're digging down, trying to find this. They know there's this vault there. They've been digging down for several seasons, trying to get to it. Every time they try to get to it, it floods with water and fills up, so they haven't been able to get down there. But that particular vault at Dog Island, or what was now known as Oak Island, was all the contents of that, at least the majority of it, was removed to help fund the American Revolutionary War.
And where's Dog Island?
It's in Nova Scotia, up near where the Mi'kmaq hang out. So that was one of the, and it was called Nova Scotia. It was called, that whole region, by the way, was called Nova Scotia, which just means New Scotland. It was named after Scotland, obviously, because of the Templar association with helping Robert the Bruce fight the Scottish War of Independence. But then later, the Templar Order, it was Templars who were involved in the fighting of the American Revolutionary War. In fact, my great-grandfather, 7 generations back, was General Joseph Warren, who was the martyr of the American Revolutionary War. He was the one who had planned the Boston Tea Party. He initiated Paul Revere. He was an alchemist. In fact, that's why he knew Paul Revere. They used to do alchemy together. Paul Revere was a silversmith. My great-grandfather was a physician, but they did alchemy together. And then they both participated in the Revolutionary War. My great-grandfather, he was the first Grand Commander of Templars in the forming United States at the time. And his brother, John Warren, was actually the first Grand Master of Freemasonry in the forming United States. And there was this relationship between the Templar Order and Freemasonry, because Freemasonry had come out of the Templar Order when the Templar Order was suppressed, one of the places it hid itself for decades was they had already been building the cathedrals of France, of Notre Dame in particular. And
who had been building
the Templars. So if you look at the old Templar rule, the only Templars that were allowed to wear gloves, according to the Templar rule, the Templar book of guidelines, so to speak, that Saint Bernard of Clairvaux had originally created this rule of 72 articles that corresponded to the 72 Kabbalistic names of God, according to Rashi, his friend Rashi. So, but according to this rule, which was the Book of Constitutions or the Book of Guidelines for the Templar Order.
Hey, real quick, most people who watch this channel aren't subscribed. And when you subscribe, you help the channel grow and you stay in the loop with every new drop. Religion Camp, History Camp, and Camp Gagnon. Now let's get back to it.
The only people that were allowed to wear gloves were the priests within the Templar Order who handled the sacrament, which was the bread baked with the manna, and the wine, which had another alchemical substance in it that was known as the blood of Christ within the Templar Order, that was made out of the manna, and this through this alchemical process. The priests had to wear gloves to handle this, and then the stonemasons within the Templar Order had to wear gloves. They're the only ones allowed to wear gloves. So, but these stonemasons, they were involved in creating not only the commandery buildings and preceptory buildings of the Templar Order, but they were also involved in helping to create these cathedrals. And they did them, they created them so that for example, the stained glass in the cathedrals, it was made with metallic oxides that was all being made alchemically. The cathedrals themselves were set up like the ancient Egyptian temples that the Templars were studying in Egypt, where they were human bodies in stone. So when you went into the cathedral, the baptismal font was at the area of the belly button. The choir sang from the area of the lungs. The priest spoke from the area of the heart. And then the sacrament was kept at the area of the third eye, or the nazar. And that the arms of the church is where all the administrative functions took place. So they were, and then as you left the church, you went through the arch, which was the birth canal. And they were named, it was named Notre Dame, or Our Lady, which is Mary. So if the church was Mary and you were being born from it, what does that make you? Makes you the born Christ. This is what made you a Christian, symbolically. You were being born as the Christ. And this was a Templar idea that was a Gnostic idea that anybody could embody the Christ, which was a universal consciousness. It was not just the last name of Jesus. It was anybody whose crown chakra had opened up and they felt that feeling of the oil being poured over the head, and they experienced the oneness. This is what made you a Christ. This is what, and that Jesus was the great exemplar of this. So the Egyptian temples were all set up to be this way, and the Templars learned of it in Egypt. They set up the cathedrals the exact same way. And not only that, but the Templars learned of the area of Giza where the pyramids were, they learned from the Coptic Christians who had passed on some of the Egyptian knowledge. They learned that the original name of Giza was Rostau, which just meant underworld, because it was believed that there was this whole secret underworld underneath the Giza Plateau. And Rostau didn't mean anything to the Templars, except for they transliterated Rostau into Latin. Ros meant rose, and Tau meant cross. So when they built the Gothic cathedrals, they set them up as crosses when viewed from the air, but then they put the rose windows in them, which made them rose crosses, or Rostau, thus hearkening back to ancient Egypt. They also made the images of the Madonna with the Jesus on her lap as a baby. Mm-hmm. That image, they got that from the images of Isis and Horus at the Temple of Isis at Philae, where they had their headquarters, where the Templars had their headquarters. And so they brought that back and put that in the cathedrals as well. So they took all this Egyptian knowledge and symbolism, they put it in the cathedrals that they were building. And then when the Templars got suppressed, during that time of the Middle Ages, people were only allowed to travel outside of their territories if the kings gave them permission to. The only people that were allowed to travel outside of their territories without permission from the king was the Templars, who were escorting pilgrims, and the stonemasons that were allowed to go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to build these cathedrals. Well, the stonemasons, the traditional cathedral builders, according to standard history, were the companions. And the companions were said to be made of two different bodies. One was known as the Children of Solomon, and the other was known as the Children of the Master Jacques. Well, both of these groups say, they still exist to this day, and both of them say that they were originally the building force of the Templars, and that the Children of Solomon just got their name from the Poor Knights of Christ of the Temple of Solomon, the Children of the Poor Knights of Christ of the Temple of Solomon, so they reduced it to the Children of Solomon, and the Children of the Master Jacques got their name from Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master that was burnt at the stake, so they were the Children of Jacques de Molay. So both of these groups, the companions, the cathedral builders, by their own accounts, they were the original building force of the Templars. And so when the Templars went underground, they hid themselves as stonemasons for a period of time. These stonemasons eventually became speculative masons, which is where Freemasonry came from. So Freemasonry came out of the Templar Order when it went underground. And this is why there are certain initiation rites that are reserved for Master Masons. Originally, they were reserved for Masters of Lodges that involved this same death and raising ceremony that the Templars did, that the ancient Egyptians did, that they learned of from groups like the Druze and the Sabaeans.
I was just reading about the Skull and Bones Society.
Skull and Bones has a similar ceremony. They learned of it from Freemasons. But the same ceremony, the Mayans perform the same ceremony. Mm-hmm. And after they're raised, they're given a certain grip, a certain handshake that's preserved amongst the Templars, it's preserved amongst the Freemasons, it's preserved amongst the Mayans, it's preserved amongst the Druze, it's preserved amongst the Hopi Indians, it's preserved amongst the Mi'kmaq. And it was believed, according to the Hopi tradition, They say this grip was originally given to everybody right before the last shaking of the earth, right before the last cataclysm. And it was a way for the priesthood to recognize each other when they came back together again. And according to the Hopi, they say when the conquistadors came over, they went to give the grip, and the conquistadors just dropped trinkets in their hands. And they were like, oh, no. Somebody's forgot. One of the races of people forgot the grip.
Interesting.
And they knew there would be problems ahead because the conquistadors didn't know it. But the conquistadors were, part of what they were looking for was the treasure of the Templars. I mean, that's the gold they were looking for initially. And then they discovered that the natives had gold and
took that instead.
Started taking that instead, yeah.
Now, you said that there's a former treasury that was on Dog Island.
Correct, yeah. So there were these vaults. There were these 7 vaults. There are now only 2 vaults because the treasure was taken out of the other 5 and used to fund the American Revolutionary War in order to create a new free Templar state,
and many of those
a new Atlantis.
The new revolutionaries, many of them were Freemasons.
Correct, yeah. In fact, majority of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were all Freemasons, and they were all Templars.
They were Templars as well.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, most of them were. So at that point in time, you have to understand there was Templar traditions that were still existing independently. There were Freemasonic systems that were existing independently, but they recognized each other and they worked together. And sometimes there were people that belonged to both that were working together. And out of this is partially what created what was known as the York Rite of Freemasonry, where they had a Templar degree within Freemasonry, and also within the Scottish Rite, for example, within Freemasonry, which is higher degrees of Freemasonry. There was a degree created known as the Knight Kadosh degree, which just meant Holy Knight, which was a Templar Knight.
Was Albert Pike a Templar as well?
He was, yeah. So Albert Pike was a Templar. He had much of where Albert Pike, like 80% of Morals and Dogma, comes from the writings of Eliphas Levi, who was a French Templar, he was also a priest. He was working within the church, and he had Eliphas Levi. His real name was Alfonso Constance. He was stationed at Saint Sulpice in France, and he part of what he was in charge of was sifting through documents that Napoleon had captured when Napoleon raided the Vatican. Now, Napoleon was a Freemason. He declared himself the head of all Masonic lodges in France when he was at the time.
And he put his brother in charge of many of them as well?
He did, and he also, Bonaparte means of good blood, and he always proclaimed that he had originally come from royalty. In fact, he was the grandson of the Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was the Scottish king in exile. So Bonnie Prince Charlie had been a Templar. He had passed down the Templar tradition via Scotland. He was exiled into France, and anyhow, he had a illegitimate son. I can't remember the woman's name who he was with, but she was the grandmother of Napoleon. So that's why he was of good blood. So he was technically Scottish royalty. And he was also working with Bernard Raymond Fabre Palaprat, who was the Grand Master of the Templar Order at the time. Bernard Raymond Fabre Palaprat was Napoleon's personal physician. And he helped guide him on his campaigns. This is part of the reason why Napoleon raided Malta, because where the Knights of Malta were, which were the descendants of the Knights Hospitalier, who had inherited all of the Templar property when the Templars were suppressed.
Right.
So they also inherited a lot of documents and stuff that they had preserved. So that's part of why Napoleon went to Malta, to try to gain some of that stuff back for France. He also went to Egypt, right? And he had his Egyptian campaign.
Right.
And he also raided the Vatican, and he brought a lot of what he could find. He was specifically looking for Templar documents in the Vatican. And he raided the Vatican. He brought all that back to France. Alfonso Constance, or Eliphas Levi was his esoteric name, was partly in charge of sifting through those documents, those Templar documents. And then from that, he wrote his book, Transcendental Magic, which talks about a lot of these ideas. And then Albert Pike literally plagiarized that book, and 80% of Albert Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, is from Eliphas Levi's writings.
Interesting.
The only difference is whenever Eliphas Levi said magic, Albert Pike changed it to reason. But this is what the degrees of the Scottish Rite is largely based on. And so the Holy Knight, or Knight Kadosh, in the Scottish Rite is a Templar Knight. And then within the York Rite, the Knight Templar within the York Rite is based on Templars. So it was kind of a way of Freemasonry reconciling with its past, of where it really originally came out of.
Interesting.
But the Master Mason degree within Freemasonry is really the highest degree within Freemasonry. It's everything else is describing the origins of that Master Mason degree. And that Master Mason degree is where they have the symbolic death and raising that the Templars used, that you find in ancient Egypt, that the Lazarus story is based off of, that the Mayans use.
Right.
And so it was believed to be the degree that went all the way back, not only into Egypt, but into Atlantis, and was also really describing the resurrection of Atlantis itself. And
I always see images of Napoleon with his hand tucked into his shirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a Masonic sign, and it alluded to when it was hidden like that. It alludes to the hiding of the tradition, hiding the heart, protecting the heart. Freemason is first prepared to be a Mason in his heart, and it can even be argued that without revealing it, the Master Mason word, the word that's given to a Master Mason when they're raised, it originally comes from an Arabic word that means, it's in Arabic, it's mohabin. And mohabin in Arabic means welcome to the loving place, welcome to the place of the heart. It comes from mahaba in Arabic, which means to love. And but it was believed that this is really what brought Osiris back to life again, was his heart being put back in. And it was the Egyptians believed that in order to attain the higher states of consciousness, you had to think through your heart. And this was an idea that was also expressed within the Gnostic traditions, that it's only through our heart, listening to our heart, that we can perceive or hear the words of God. The true words of the God of light, the God of love, the God of life. Not the demiurge, but the original God. The God of fire, even. Even the word Jesus in Hebrew. So in Hebrew, God is Yod-He-Vav-He, the sacred name of God in the Hebrew tradition. Jesus, it can be argued, can be spelled Yod-He-Shin-Vav-He. Well, Shin in the Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition was associated with fire or divine light. In fact, when a Hebrew priest or an Eastern Orthodox priest gives a blessing, they put their hand in this shape, which is the shape of the Hebrew letter Shin. It represents the divine fire, the divine light. So Jesus was saying he was the divine light hidden even within the name of God.
I see.
Right? So there's even within the demiurge, which was believed to be Yahweh, Yod-He-Vav-He, hidden within that was a divine light. And he represented the voice of that divine light.
I see.
So it was, this was the divine light of God, the true God of light and life and love, and was the source, the monad that everything else came out of.
Right.
So
now you said that there's two treasuries of the Templars that still exist. Are they in the United States?
They're both in the United States. I can't tell you where they are, but I can tell you that one of them is up in Montana region. And when Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark on their mission so Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon. Napoleon, at the time, knew his days were numbered. He was aware of one of these vaults, these Templar vaults in the Americas, within that area, and he sold the Louisiana Purchase to Jefferson because Jefferson was a Templar. He was secretly a Templar, and it's why he was recognized by Freemasons, even though officially there's no record of him being a Freemason. But there were lodges named after him. There was his nephews that were named after him all became well-known Freemasons. There's a Masonic funeral for Jefferson, even though there's no official. He had also attended the Lodge of Nine Muses in France, which was a Masonic lodge, but there's no official record of Jefferson being made a Freemason. But he was a Templar, and he was known for his connections. Napoleon sold the Louisiana Purchase to him, where one of these vaults was, up in Montana. So when Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark, who were Freemasons, up into the region, they specifically went to go look for this vault, amongst other things, and make sure it was still there. I'll tell you this is a secret within the Templar Order, but I'm comfortable revealing here. If you take the Newport Tower in Rhode Island, which was a Templar landmark, it was a Templar structure. it has a specific alignment on the summer solstice, or in the winter solstice, summer and winter solstice. There's a beam of light that illuminates a keystone that's in the tower itself, and there's a specific alignment that's set up that points to the Kensington Runestone in Minnesota. And if you keep following that path past the Kensington Runestone, it leads to where one of the vaults is. And I can't tell you exactly where it's at. We know where it's at in Montana, but it's, yeah, there's the Newport Tower, which was originally a Templar structure that was built. And I encourage you to look at the works of Scott Wolter related to that, but where he proves that. But there's an alignment that goes to the Kensington Runestone in Minnesota, and if you keep following that alignment, it leads to one of the vaults in Montana. This particular vault was guarded, and it still continues to be guarded by one of the tribes there in Minnesota. But Lewis and Clark were actually sent to check on that vault, amongst other things, and that's why they went that way, and then made their way over from there into Portland, Oregon, went to the coast.
Do they write about that, or is that secretive?
They write about being near the vault. They write about disappearing for a few days to go check on things in the area, and then coming back to base camp. Well, that period of time where they're disappearing is they were checking on the vault itself.
Did you feel that, or is it believed that Napoleon sells this portion of land plus the vault to Jefferson because he wants it to be in good keeping with another Templar brother?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Because the deal makes no sense. I mean,
right.
It's so cheap.
Right, exactly. It's because it was all to preserve the Templar vault that they were both aware of. And that vault still continues to exist, and that's where some of the arcs are. And that's the one that we hope to open here soon. A lot of the reason why I'm doing these podcast interviews is to make people aware of certain ideas. We're trying to get the public aware of certain ideas that they're not contrary to what's in the Bible, but they're like extensions. It's like a little bit more. I mean, like, for example, instead of there being an Ark of the Covenant, there are multiple arcs, right? We have to get people used to that idea before we reveal them.
And when will you open this one?
We're hoping to do it here within the next year or two. We've been waiting for conditions to be right where we can, first of all, reveal it all at once around the world, which we can do now with our modern technology. It's number one. Number two, we have to set up conditions so that these things belong to all people. They don't belong to any one religion. They don't belong to any one government. And there's going to be everyone from Spain to Egypt to Italy, the Vatican, to the United States itself, are all going to try to lay claim to these things. We need to get it understood that these belong to all humanity. They don't belong to any one government. They don't belong to any one religion. You're going to have Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions trying to lay claim to this stuff. They don't belong to any of them. They belong to all of them. Even Sabaean. And let's not forget the Native American Indians, indigenous First Nation people who have been protecting it for us. you know, all of these people have a place at the table, or the round table, shall we say, where everyone's equal, right? So we got to get people prepared to understand that. Also within these vaults are Gnostic scriptures, other scriptures of the New Testament, like the Nag Hammadi, that are tell a little bit different story of the New Testament. So that's going to affect Christianity. There are Kabbalistic texts which speak at a different interpretation to the Torah. There are things that validate ideas that are in the Quran. And there are Hermetic texts as well, which was, Hermeticism was just a pagan form of Gnosticism. And all of these things, they work together, but we have to kind of prepare people for that, and so they understand it, so that when we reveal it, it's understood in context.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 vaults, one in this area, Minnesota, that we're looking to open soon. There's another vault that is actually in Washington, D.C. It's on national park property. The current custodians of the national parks don't know it's there. And it's going to take some work to get permission to dig that up on national park property, especially in an area where they don't know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. But it's been there since the Revolutionary War. So it was moved there at that time. So we got these 2 vaults, both of which contain arcs. The arcs are divided up 3. It's my understanding. Now, I haven't gone into these vaults. I just know where they are. It's my understanding that there are 3 vaults. There are 3 arcs at the vault in Montana. There's 3 arcs at the vault in Washington, D.C., as well as a whole lot of other treasures that have been collected by the Templar Order in antiquity, and these texts, different texts, and that all of this, from a Templar perspective, is geared towards creating a new Atlantis. That the United States was intended to be created as a new Atlantis, a new Jerusalem. That's why we have the freedoms that we demanded be put in place. It's the reason why Washington, D.C. was originally designed to be built like a giant Egyptian necropolis, but instead, ended up being built with some Egyptian themes, like the Washington Monument being a giant obelisk, but also Greek ideas. It was believed that Athena was originally one of the goddesses of Atlantis, and that's what Athens is named after in Greece. But some of that symbolism was incorporated into Washington, D.C. as well as the Roman influence after that. It's why the Great Seal of the United States has a pyramid on it. It's why some of the cities around early America are named after the way they are, like Memphis and Memphis was an ancient name for Egypt, for example, for an area of Egypt, know, particularly where the alchemical processes were taking place. Anyhow, there's this whole tradition there, and the idea is that the foundations have been laid. We're now at a point where people have the freedom and we don't have the control of the Roman Church and churches in general that we used to. People are more open-minded now to these ideas, and there's been an effort on behalf of the Templar Order over the last 250 years to get people used to understanding that the myths associated with Christianity and with even Judaism come from earlier sources, and that these earlier sources have a pattern to them, and that this pattern describes a network from the ancient world that went back to this Atlantis. Francis Bacon, who was a Templar, he was responsible for writing some of the Shakespeare plays, which introduced new words into the English language. But he also wrote the book, The New Atlantis. And it was an outline for how to recreate these technologies of Atlantis. It's what the Royal Society of Britain, when it was founded, was based on, was trying to develop these technologies.
Hey guys, we're going to take a break really quick because if you know me, you know I'm constantly trying to find the perfect level of stimulation. Yeah, I want enough energy at the beginning of the day to go to the gym, be a good dad, and then record a 3-hour podcast about like ancient civilizations or the Knights Templar or something like that. So, you know, I like a little caffeine, but if I do too much caffeine, I can start to hear my own heartbeat coming through my chest. And that is where mud water comes in. Mud water is a coffee alternative made with functional mushrooms and adaptogens with about like 1/7 the caffeine of a regular cup of coffee. So you're going to get that morning ritual. You're going to get the focused energy without feeling like you're cracked out or without the crash that you get from caffeine. So I've been trying the OG blend, which is like cacao, you got a little bit of chai, you know, you get some reishi, and then of course you get functional mushrooms. It's warm, it's a little spicy, it's got like a little chocolatey vibe, and it basically tastes like chocolate chai had like a health conscious child, you know? Their starter kit is the best way to try it because you're going to get a full-size tin of whichever blend you choose, a free rechargeable frother, free gifts, and free shipping. They have 4 amazing flavors: OG, coffee, matcha, and turmeric. So whether you're just trying to quit coffee completely or just trying to cut down on your caffeine use, there is an option for you. If you want to make the switch to cleaner energy, go to mudwater.com/camp and grab the starter kit. Use the code CAMP when you check out to get up to 43% off. The frother alone is absolutely worth it. That's right, up to 43% off with the code CAMP at mudwtr.com. Go to mudwater.com/camp, and after you check out, make sure you tell them that the good folks here at Camp sent you. It really helps out the show. Now let's get back to it. Hey guys, we're going to take a break really quick because it's summertime, and I got to tell you something. There's a specific point every summer where you realize that your entire personal style has just been like the same jacket or the same pair of shoes, and that's why I've been rocking with GLD. You see it on my neck. I wear it in every single episode. I wear it all the time. I mean, look at this. The first thing I noticed when I picked it up is like the weight. It's genuinely substantial. It feels great. It has like an actual an actual texture to it. It's awesome. And the details look even better in person. I didn't expect it. The website, it looks good, but when it's in my hand and around my neck, it actually is way better. I got this crucifix here. Of course, I'm Catholic. I got to represent Jesus Christ. And I wear it while I'm recording, while I'm going out, traveling, even when I'm sleeping, even when I'm showering. And it's great. I don't have to completely reinvent my wardrobe. Just one little chain elevates all my looks. GLD has chains and pendants and bracelets and watches at pretty much every price point. You can get the 18 karat gold plated piece like this. this, along with options in solid gold and even natural diamonds. GLD also has more than 2 million customers and over 50,000 5-star reviews, and every piece is guaranteed for life. So whether you want something subtle or you want a piece that completely changes your outfit, GLD makes it easy to upgrade your style without having to overthink it, and of course, without having to break the bank. And great news, for a limited time, if you are listening to this right now, if you are a camper, you are going to get an insane deal. When you use the code CAMP, C-A-M-P, you're going to get 40% off at GLD.com. 40% off with the code CAMP at GLD.com. And after you purchase, they're going to ask how you heard about them. Make sure you tell them that Mark and Christos from the campsite sent you. Now let's get back to the show. Isaac Newton, much of his work was also...
Isaac Newton, he was a Templar as well. And Isaac Newton was best friends with Jean Theophilus Desagalliers, who was a member of the Royal Society. He was also one of the first Grand Masters of the Grand Lodge of England, the newly formed Grand Lodge of England and Freemasonry. They worked with Robert Boyle and others to do alchemy. They were refining these processes. In fact, Isaac Newton had a book that he valued amongst all others, and it was called Mana. And it was a alchemical treatise on how to create this mana, this monoatomic substance that the Templars had learned of. But he also did in fact, and I have a translation of it in this book I gave you, Isaac Newton's translation of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Mm-hmm. He had his own personal translation of it that he did. But it was all based on the sciences that had been learned by the Templars in ancient Egypt that was said to go back to Atlantis. And so, but they were all, Francis Bacon, his New Atlantis was about, okay, these are the technologies we need to develop. The Royal Society started to do that. Scientists within the United States finished that process.
What kind of technology is that?
Everything you have today. I mean, from automobiles to submarines to personal computers to the technology to broadcast images and sound across all over the earth. Satellite technology. These were all alluded to in Francis Bacon's New Atlantis. Story of New Atlantis is that there were these people who landed on they crash landed on an island, right? Their boat crash landed on this island. And when they got off the island, they found that there was a group already existing there on the island. And this group referred to themselves as the Children of Solomon. And the head of the Children of Solomon wore a turban with a red Templar cross on it. And they had developed all of these technologies and medicines. And so when the captain of the ship said, "Where did you learn about all this? How did you develop all this? And who are you?" The head of the College of Solomon said, "Well, look, it's like this. We live on this island and we know the entire world, but the world doesn't know of our existence. We're hidden here. And so we've been privately living here, building these technologies." And they said, "Well, where'd you learn of the technologies?" And he said, "Well, shortly after we came here to this island, we looked out and we saw a cross, an equal-armed cross hovering over the ocean. And so we sailed our sailboats out to this cross of light that was in the sky. And there was a force field that wouldn't let us get any closer to it, but it shot this book out to us. And this book was an instruction manual on how to make all this stuff. So we brought it back to the island, and we've been making it ever since. So basically, they described this UFO encounter, right? Where they see this thing in the sky, this light in the sky that's in the shape of a cross, and it gives them this book that they then start to reverse engineer, or I guess engineer the things in the book.
An Enoch-esque kind of story.
Right, and that's where, and they call themselves the College of Solomon, and the leader's wearing a red Templar cross on his turban, and so this was the secret Templar tradition. And it was the secret Templar tradition of the Americas, of trying to establish this within the Americas, so within the United States in particular, the creation of the United States. So the creation of the United States was based on this model of this creating this new Atlantis, which was the mission of the Templar Order initially, which was to go out and find the remnants of Atlantis, gain their knowledge, their philosophy, their technology, bring it back to create a new Templar state, a new Atlantis, a new Jerusalem, a free state where people would have the freedoms to not only understand all this, but to worship as they chose to gather as they wanted to have all the rights that are within the Bill of Rights. Again, that was emphasized in Parsifal by Wolfram von Eschenbach, where it said, if any Templar becomes a ruler of a foreign people, let them ensure they are given their God-given rights. So that's what this country was founded on. That's why we celebrate the 250-year anniversary, where my great-great-great-grandfather, died at the Battle of Bunker Hill. He was the martyr of the Revolution. He was the Grand Commander of the Templars at the time. His brother, John Warren, was the first Grand Master of Freemasonry within the States. They're the ones that staged the Boston Tea Party to ensure that that kicked off so that we could have these rights today. And the United States was created to pave the way to show the rest of the world what it means to have freedoms, to have a democratic system where we have a representational government, where we can build ourselves into the future, and as long as we can continue to get along with each other, we can create that, a future that goes, we believe, into space, and maybe eventually back to Orion again,
Do you think the Templars have done a good job at making America into the new Atlantis?
We've done as best we can. I mean, anytime, obviously, we don't run it. We created the model and the system, set forth the freedoms for people to have a government of the people, for the people, by the people. But it was believed at the time that your representatives that you elected were the most educated amongst the people. That was the hope. That was the model was based on that the most educated people would be elected and therefore could guide the rest of the country. We now live in a representational government where it's just mob rule. Whoever has the most votes wins, but the mob is uneducated.
Right.
And so we therefore elect uneducated leaders. And this has led us kind of astray to a certain degree. I mean, it's led to infighting. It's led to corrupt leadership that where our representative governments are represent who pays them the most money as far as lobbying, instead of who's the most educated amongst them. And so we're kind of in a mess right now.
Right.
The potential is still there, though. We can still have greatness. Even our institutions, our educational institutions, have become corrupted by money and by some would argue they have their own agendas.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of at a mess right now, but the foundational principles are still there for us to have a great country and for the people to come together. As long as there continues to be a separation between church and state, so that we don't have religions trying to control government. That's the whole reason why the Templars created a separation of church and state, is they saw what happened in Europe when the church controlled the government. I mean, it led to their downfall, you know, and so it's important that there's a separation there. One of the pitfalls that we're starting to see is we're getting elected leaders that are more subservient to their church systems than they are to the people themselves. And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that religion doesn't have its place. From a Templar perspective, I mean, at the heart of all religions is something sacred, and we're sworn to protect the sacred regardless of its source. The problem is, see, in the ancient world, if you were a priest of any one religion, you could go to another religion and be recognized. And they all kind of recognized that they were all part of a system that originally came from the same source at some point far in antiquity, so they could recognize each other. The problem today is we have all these religions that all come out of the same sources, but they're all fighting with each other.
I see.
And so if any one of them starts to try to control government, it's at the exclusion of the others, and it can't be that way. It needs to be it said we have, for example, we have a left wing and we have a right wing, but they're both part of the same bird, Right. They're both part of the same eagle, you know, and we forget that sometimes. So
I'm curious your opinion. My feeling, maybe my assumption when looking at the early founding of America and how many of the framers were Freemasons.
Yeah.
I always kind of assumed that it was a very powerful club.
Yeah.
A very powerful society.
Yeah.
And all the most well-educated, powerful, and important people of the time would belong to this club so that they could share information sort of away from the eye of the church, away from the eye of the government, whether it's, the monarch in England, and that they were able to operate kind of in the shadows. And they were able to kind of like do deals and work together. And it existed in a specific time when that was important. And as time has gone on, that Freemasonry has kind of lost its foothold within American society and no longer has the power that it once had.
Yeah, I mean, originally it was because it was secret, it could operate in a way in which ideas could be exchanged. It wasn't necessarily powerful. I mean, you got to remember, these were colonists, but they did have a network, an underground network, and that network still exists. If Freemasonry, technically, the degrees of Freemasonry were said to be, the teachings were said to be pre-Diluvian teachings, or teachings that existed before the flood, that had been found by the Templars and had been made into a degree system in places like Scotland and France, and which were designed to prepare people to build civilization again. And should civilization be destroyed, like it had been in the past, it could be recreated just based on what every Mason had memorized from these degree systems. So it was kind of an underground network that was, when it came to building the United States, it was building a new civilization, and it already had the keys for how to do that. And our government was largely based off of those teachings, that system. That, for example, there were three, within every Masonic lodge, there are three principal officers that represent three branches of government. And these were largely based off of what was known as the Kabbalistic tree of life within the Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition, where there are three pillars, and that all organization of reality was constructed based off of these three pillars. Well, in the same way, the Masonic tradition has those same three pillars, and then the United States government was built off of those three pillars. That's why we have a federal, a legislative, and a judicial branches of government, those three different pillars.
Executive, judicial.
Right, executive, yeah, executive, judicial, yeah, correct. You're
executive,
right.
Judicial, legislative?
And legislative, right, correct. And that, the structure of government is based off of those three pillars. Well, this was believed to be an ancient idea for structure. So the United States government was based off of that. It was even believed to be a cosmic model, if you will, for how all organization comes from this. From a Hebrew Kabbalistic standpoint, there are three pillars with 10 emanations on them, connected by 22 paths.
Could you pull up the Kabbalistic tree of life?
That's forming 32 combinations with a hidden 33rd. This is really where the degree system of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry comes from.
Comes out of a Kabbalistic tradition.
Correct. And it's also, by the way, where, if you look at the Mayan system for how they say that their reality came out of a cosmic tree, and this tree had 22 branches, which connected their 10 deities. Their 10 main deities within the Mayan framework. And it's because it's the same framework as the Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition. And they built their temples out of them. And they even put two main pillars within the doorways of all their temples, just like Solomon's temple was built. So there's a direct correlation there on different sides of the Atlantic, and the Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition largely came out of the Zohar. There you go. So you have the three pillars, right? Wisdom, strength, and beauty. The three main pillars of the Kabbalistic tradition. So that was said to be a cosmic blueprint. And our United States government was based, and it had three main levels to it, or three main horizontal bars. And those, by the way, those horizontal bars corresponded to the Hebrew letters Mem, Aleph, and Shin, which corresponded to water, air, and fire, respectively. That Shin, again, was the fire we talked about earlier. And they were levels of awakening. And these were the same levels of awakening within the Gnostic tradition. It's believed that's why even the story of Noah's Ark, which was the original flood story of the Bible, you have the earth obsessed with its physical senses, which was associated with earth. Along comes a flood, water. Then Noah lets birds go into the air, which was associated with air. And then he lands on Mount Ararat and makes a burnt sacrifice to God, which is fire. So these were the stages of consciousness awakening. And by the way, Ararat in Sanskrit means illuminated one, or gnosis, or divine knowledge. So these things are all the same story. They're just told symbolically in different ways, in different cultures, but they use the same symbolism for the most part. But
I'm curious your opinion with Freemasonry specifically. There's so many conspiracies that surround Freemasonry.
Sure.
Have you seen like the Freemasonic apron being the same as like the Gmail logo? Like,
sure.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Could you Google that? What do you make of that?
Or the Facebook logo being
Tubal cane.
Tubal cane. Yeah. Tubal cane. Yeah. Sure. These things enter into pop culture, whether intentionally or not. I mean, on a certain level, Freemasons practice a symbolic system that's archetypal, right? It's something that's already within the consciousness of people, whether they realize it or not. And what happens is these things get grafted onto new developments. But, there have been Freemasons that have been involved in logo making, especially with, but it's not like it's a conspiracy like Freemasonry is running it, right? It's more like there's these archetypal patterns that show up that Freemasonry is already using. So
you would say that it's not necessarily a proof of control or an homage, but rather touching on some type of same undergirding truth.
Yeah, it's an archetypal truth. It's a truth it's these symbolisms. The symbolism's already there. I mean, another example, for example, is if you ever look at The Lion King, the story of The Lion King that Disney put out, it's the original story of Osiris and Set, and how Osiris is tricked by his brother Set, is killed, and then Horus, which would be the new lion cub, comes to power, but his guide is Rafiki, who's the baboon. Well, the baboon is Thoth or Tahuti in the Egyptian myths. And in The Lion King, you'll notice that Rafiki, the baboon, he has a staff with two balls on it, two-ball cane, right? Just like you see in the Facebook logo, which is also a Masonic symbol, And
what does that symbol mean for Masonry?
Well, Tubal Cain was the eighth man from Adam who so far excelled in cunning smith work to be the inventor of metallic operations by fire, which is alchemy, right? So it was an allusion to his name, which is important to Freemasons.
I see.
So because of the alchemical tradition, that was there. I mean,
and the story of Lion King, I guess, coming from Osiris also becomes what, Macbeth?
Yeah, it's a similar story. Yeah.
Written
Macbeth
by Francis Bacon.
Francis Bacon, right.
Templar.
You're right, exactly. And by the way, Francis Bacon, going back to Francis Bacon, he was the illegitimate son of, or he was the son
Hamlet, sorry.
Hamlet, yeah, he was the son hidden at birth of Queen Elizabeth. He was Queen Elizabeth's son, Queen Elizabeth the First.
Francis Bacon was.
Francis Bacon was her secret son. He had been given to Lord Nicholas and Lady Anne Bacon, Lord Nicholas was the chancellor, if you will, of under Queen Elizabeth, and Lady Anne Bacon was Queen Elizabeth's main lady in waiting. And so Queen Elizabeth, in order to maintain her power, had to be seen as a virgin queen. This is what gave her power, because the other monarchies of Europe were all trying to marry her. And so if she remained unwed and as a virgin, then it gave her a certain amount of power in working with these other monarchies in Europe that were all trying to connect with her and to try to have power over her. But by staying a virgin queen, it made her maintain her power. So she couldn't have been known for not being a virgin and having a child out of wedlock. So Francis Bacon had to be hidden at birth. He was given to Lord Nicholas and Lady Anne Bacon to raise. But he was raised close to the court. He was tutored by people like John Dee, who was the Queen's astrologer, but she was also one of Queen's top lines of defense. She was in charge of their secret service.
007.
007 was his secret cipher number, and it represented him looking out for Queen Elizabeth. The two eyes and the hand was the 007. And that's where Ian Fleming got that from for James Bond later on. But it was... So Francis Bacon was raised, he was tutored by John Dee as well as others. And this is also why when he started to write the Shakespeare plays, by the way, he chose the word Shakespeare because this was the device of Athena, who was the goddess of Atlantis. Pallas Athena was said to have a helmet of invisibility, and she shook a spear. Well, Wilhelm means helmet. Shakespeare is the spear. So these are the two magical talismans of Athena. And she was the goddess of Atlantis, according to Plato. But Poseidon was the god of Atlantis, and Athena was the goddess. That's why Athens was named after Athena, and it's why Francis Bacon chose these two things for the name William Shakespeare. He found someone named William Shakespeare, and it fit very well but there's no evidence of Shakespeare's own writing. In fact, his own signatures that we have of him, it's like he could barely sign his own name.
Or that Francis Bacon perhaps heard the name from a real person.
And then adopted it. Yeah.
Oh,
and so, and then Francis Bacon encoded, stuff all throughout the Shakespeare plays that put his name in them. I think it's Midsummer Night's Dream. There's a character named Francis Flute. And Francis, the name Francis appears like 32 times on one page. Again, alluding to that number related to the Kabbalistic tradition, which was Francis Bacon's cipher number as well.
Which he would have learned all this from John.
He would have learned all this from John Dee and from the Templar tradition that he was a part of. By the way, Queen Elizabeth I was a Templar. She belonged to a Templar group in Germany that was known as the Militia Crucifera Evangelica. And there was a book published called the Neometria, and it was a 2,000-page book that was talking about the symbolic dimensions of King Solomon's temple and how this alluded to alchemical, Gnostic, and Kabbalistic ideas. Mm-hmm. Frederick, the Duke of Württemberg, was the Grand Master of the Militia Crucifera Evangelica. But the Neometria lists Queen Elizabeth I as a member of it, and this was an underground Templar body. It ended up, Simon Studian was the one who wrote the Neometria. This ended up forming later what was known as the Rosicrucian movement. It came out of the Militia Crucifera Evangelica, and Johann Valentin Andrea, who wrote The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, he was a member of the Militia Crucifera Evangelica, which was this underground Templar body. And it's the reason why Christian Rosenkreutz in the Rosicrucian Manifestos is described as having a tunic with a red equal-armed cross over the shoulder, which is, again, the Templar symbol. So, all these things go back, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, they all, the Militia Crucifera Evangelica, they all go back to this underground Templar body.
Right.
And tradition, of which Queen Elizabeth I was listed as a member. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, her son was Francis Bacon, who wrote The New Atlantis, which described the technologies that needed to be developed by this underground hidden Templar body that was to exist in the new world of what's now the United States of America.
Doesn't it go back even further to Hiram Abiff and the creation of the Second Temple?
Yeah, so that's a myth that's not found in the Bible, but is found within Freemasonry. Mm-hmm. Hiram, if you transliterate Hiram from Hebrew into Greek, basically you take the letters HRM, because Hebrew doesn't have any vowels. You transliterate that into Greek, Hiram becomes Hermes, which is Hermes, right? And that's why even the Hiram of the Bible is described as being a master of metallurgy.
This Hiram of
making
Tyre.
dye, yeah, Hiram of Tyre, making dyes, all the things that Hermes is ascribed to being able to do. And it's alluding to that Hermetic tradition of which Moses himself had been initiated into. Again, Tutmosis, the Tut or the Tahuti, Thoth is Hermes. Right. And that's why it's believed that the early Christianity was trying to go back to that tradition, which is why the Nag Chamundi Library, which is found just outside the Valley of the Kings, they had early Christian texts, Gospels, in these clay jars, but they also had Hermetic writings with them, which means that those people were valuing the Hermetic writings as much as the early Christian writings, because they were all one and the same. It was all deemed to be part of the same tradition, going back to that root civilization, really.
Hey guys, we're going to take a break really quick because I got to tell you something. If you know me, you know I'm obsessed with finding ways to cheat biology without accidentally ruining my biology. And for a long time, I associated putting a pouch in with being focused and energized and like ready to attack the day. But the thing is, nicotine is a vasoconstrictor, which means it literally narrows your blood vessels and restricts oxygen delivery to your muscles. So I'm taking something because I think it's helping me when I'm working out and it's helping me lock in. Meanwhile, my blood vessels are essentially closing the gates while my muscles are begging for supplies. So you're trying to get this awesome pump, but your body's like, I'm just going to elevate your blood pressure and give you some anxiety. And that's why I switched to Ultra pouches. I love Ultra. Ultra is a 100% nicotine-free pouch with 0 nicotine and 0 caffeine. It gives me that like pouch ritual that I like, and also a really smooth energy and just a really locked in focus. And it's so much better when I'm working out. It makes me feel great at the gym. They use nootropics and adaptogens, and I usually feel it start within like a few minutes. And I throw one in before I go to the gym, before a podcast. I have one in right now, and it sharpens me up without making me feel like I'm like anxious or like I'm jittery. And when I'm fasting or trying to clean up my diet, it really helps quiet just the food noise and the cravings that I have. It's amazing. You get all the focus, you get all the energy, you still get the pouch experience, but again, there's 0 nicotine and 0 caffeine. So I'm not dealing with the same wired feeling or like the crash that I get from caffeine. My favorite flavor is blue raspberry. I got the watermelon right here because I already finished the blue raspberry. Ultra is the ultimate guilt-free pouch, delivering instant focus and mental clarity without nicotine and caffeine. And I've great news. If you are listening to this program right now, when you use the code CAMP, you will get 15% off when you go to takeultra.com. That is takeultra.com. Use the code CAMP for 15% off. And after you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about them. Tell them that Mark and Christos from the campsite sent you. Now let's get back to the show. Hey guys, we're going to take a break really quick because I want to talk to you about the thing in your back pocket that's probably a disaster. Yeah, this episode is brought to you by Extra and the new Wallet Pro. I switched to this and I'm not going back. This is genuinely the wallet that I use every day. It is next-gen Italian leather, and it's got this metal ejector trigger, so you hit the button with your thumb and all your cards instantly fan out. One hand, instant, no more digging around at the counter. And yeah, you're not going to be holding up the line next time you're trying to like cash out. And here's what gets me. It's the slimmest leather wallet that Extra has ever made, but it actually holds more. Yeah, up to 14 cards plus your cash, and it sits flat in your pocket, no plastic anywhere. It is all recycled aluminum and real leather, and it comes with a lifetime warranty. So yeah, this is basically the last wallet that you will ever buy. And here's the kicker. It is Extra's 10th anniversary sale right now. So you're going to get up to 40% off through August 17th. You go to partner.extra.com/campgagnon. It's linked in the description too, and use the code GAGNON20 to get an extra 20% off on top of that. Yes, it comes with Extra's 100-day money-back guarantee, so there is literally 0 risk. Upgrade that beat-up wallet that you have that's falling apart. Get this wallet that is perfect Italian leather. It smells great. It has no plastic, and it holds everything you need and more. You will thank me later. Now let's get back to the show. So in the Templar tradition and the Freemasonic tradition, who is Hermes? Like, is it God? Is it the monad?
No, he's just the messenger. He was like an early Christ figure. He was bringing the light from the monad, and was the true secret of Hermeticism, of the writings of Hermes, was the idea that if you're the monad, if you're God, if you're all that is, say there's nothing outside of yourself. That means there's nothing outside of yourself to create with. The only way you could create is within your own mind. Therefore, all creation as we know it is actually just within the mind of the Creator. It's all mind stuff of the Creator. It's all a matrix within the Creator, and there's different levels to it. There's different dimensions to it. And it's all a program. It's all, I mean, what's a video game? It's just really at the end of the day ones and zeros, and it's not even that. It's just energy that's organized that way, right? And that's what our reality is. We're living in a matrix, and and our thoughts are a part of that mind stuff. And it's, in fact, our thoughts are co-creative within that matrix. And that's the basis of alchemy. That our thoughts actually affect the outcome of our reality. And that once you understand that, that's the beginning of mastery. That you are a co-creator within a giant mind of reality, that the energy around us is just, that makes up reality, is just the mind of the creator. Mm-hmm. And you're a co-creator within that. And that there is no death, right? Because it's all part of the program. And that Jesus really came here to show people, to liberate people from their own lower nature, their own thing that keeps them imprisoned here. But also to show that death doesn't really exist. Mm-hmm. And that, and once you understand that, and that's part of what these initiation ceremonies are designed to show. When during the Templar initiation ceremonies or the Mayan initiation ceremonies or the Masonic initiation ceremonies, really, if they're done right, they're designed to help you realize that you have a consciousness that transcends the body, that transcends the physical body. And so there is no real death. And once you understand that, that's the beginning of mastery, because you're no longer afraid. You can move forward and help guide humanity. And, people threaten you because you're going against their conditioning, their brainwashing. It doesn't matter if they kill you, because you're going to survive.
So then, is there a demiurge that keeps us in this illusion?
According to the Templar tradition, there is, but the demiurge is our own collective ego that keeps us afraid, keeps us in line.
What is the term, Azaboth?
Yeah, there's several different names.
From Gnostic tradition.
This is the Gnostic tradition,
the creation of Sophia that's hidden in the cloud, right?
Well, so Sophia created the demiurge accidentally, or according to some Gnostic traditions. So Sophia, or wisdom, she was what's known as an aeon, one of the pairs of thoughts created by the monad.
And there's the masculine and the feminine.
There's the masculine and feminine. So the Christos, or the universal consciousness, was the masculine. The Sophia was the feminine. And that Sophia, outside of the Christos, without being paired with the Christos, accidentally created the demiurge. Or maybe out of curiosity, she created a material god. Mm-hmm. Or a god that could create material reality, right, shall we say.
But subservient to the monad.
Subservient.
Underneath.
Underneath, right.
And it was Alzaboth? Was that the name?
Correct, yeah. It's one of the names, yeah. Yaldabad is another.
Yeah.
But it was a, this god created by Sophia existed thinking it was all that was.
Because it was hidden out of shame.
Because it was hidden. Yeah. Or it was created and perhaps she created it and didn't know how to control it. And it became this matrix of material reality. Still within the made out of the mind stuff of the monad, right? But in a new form. And being isolated, it thought that that's all it was. And so when humanity was created out of that, humanity thought that's all that is. We became a materialistic creature, thinking the materialism all that was. But as we started to wake up to gnosis, to the divine knowledge, this is when we come to realize, supposedly, we started to create other gods in our image. We created beings that explained our own psychological states. And so this demiurge became a jealous god. No other gods before me, right? And then this led to genocide. The sanctioning of genocide of people against people. It led to the collapse of the Tower of Babel in order to confuse people. It led to originally it led to the demiurge coming down into the Garden of Eden and trying to find Adam and Eve. Well, clearly this isn't an omniscient, omnipresent God, right? Because he would know where they were. He wouldn't need to find them, right? And it was even believed that the serpent may have been that was trying to open the eyes of Adam and Eve. This represented the Gnosis. And it represented Jesus, the Messiah. In fact, the word serpent, nehesh, which we talked about before, in Hebrew gematria, adds up to 358. Well, Messiah in Hebrew also adds up to 358.
Mm-hmm.
So alluded to, this was the Messiah that opens our eyes. And by the way, 358 is part of the Fibonacci sequence, right? Which is the proof of the mind of God in our reality, because you find it all throughout material world, right? From the distance of the planets from each other to how plants grow to how the human body grows, right?
Right. And not to confuse people, this comes from the Gnostic tradition.
This is
not
right.
a mainstream Christian
It's not mainstream,
belief.
Right. But it's something that the Templars adopted and accepted.
Mm-hmm. And do the Freemasons adopt this to a capacity?
It's alluded to within the Masonic degree system, yes. Freemasons say that you could be a Freemason from any faith.
Mm-hmm.
Any religion. And we all come together and worship around the same altar. But Freemasonry itself is not a religion in itself.
Right.
It's a fraternity that brings in people of different faiths, and recognizing that there's a truth within all of it, and that this is the start of building society, right? Mm-hmm. You can't build society unless you have people of different backgrounds coming together.
Mm-hmm.
The United States of America is based on that model.
Why is it so important for the Freemasons for the actual construction of these great buildings and these great monoliths, or I guess megaliths?
Yeah, they're symbolic, number one, of they represent ourselves. Again, just like the model of the cathedral is based on the human body and form, or the ancient Egyptian temples were based on a human body and form. In the same way, as Joseph Campbell says, all the gods and all the goddesses, all the gods and all the devils are all within you, right? They're all aspects of our own consciousness. And coming to understand that as we go into a temple, or we go into a church, we go into a cathedral, we go into it represents aspects of ourselves and our own awakening. That's the Gnostic aspect of it, right? That as we come to understand that, we come to understand ourselves, and that's what leads to our awakening. I mean, above the temple of Apollo at Delphi in ancient Greece was inscribed the injunction, "Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods." And this is the path that we're all on, right? I mean, you are the Christ. You are Jesus. That story is your path to awakening. But the same goes for the myths, the other myths too around the world. You know, I mean, it's not just Christianity. You know, it's the myth of Moses. It's the myth of Muhammad, peace be upon him. It's the myth of the Hindu gods and goddesses. It's the myth of the Buddha. You know, these are all about our own awakening. We become that. That's why an enlightened person in Buddhism becomes a Buddha, right? An enlightened person within Christianity becomes a Christ. It's the same idea.
I see. What do you make of Aleister Crowley or Crowley?
Crowley was well, first of all, he was an illegitimate Freemason. He had been initiated into a clandestine system of Freemasonry. So he adopted some of the Masonic symbolism within his own system, shall we say. I mean, his own. He had been initiated into a body of Templars within Europe that was called the OTO, the Order Templi Orientalis. It was started by a guy by the name of Theodore Reuss. Reuss had been initiated into several schools of initiation, including Martinism, under Gerard Encausse, better known as Papus, who was a Martinist, which was a Rosicrucian Masonic system, Christian system. Theodore Reuss had been initiated into this. He formed the OTO as a new Templar expression. And Crowley had been initiated into it, but he was never officially initiated into the higher levels of the OTO. He had been exposed to several things, though, through it, though. And when World War II in particular came, there was a great fight, if you will, between the esoteric orders, the Templar orders, and the Nazis. The Nazis had come out of a organization known as the Thule Society, the Thule Society. This society was trying to do what the Templars did in terms of like going around the world, collecting the mysteries, bringing it back to Germany to try to rebuild Germany up after World War I. It became perverted. But there were several top Nazis that had come out of that. So that the original Templar bodies, traditions like Rosicrucians, Templars, Freemasons, they were fighting against the Nazis. This is why people like FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Harry Truman, they were Freemasons. Winston Churchill, MacArthur, they were all represented this Templar strain that was fighting against the Nazis. But what happened is the Nazis suppressed, and the first people that went to concentration camps were not the Jews. It was members of these esoteric orders, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Martinists, the OTO, the original OTO. So as the OTO got destroyed, largely in Europe, Crowley, he had originally tried to, when Theodore Reuss died, he tried to Crowley declared himself the head of the OTO. Well, nobody in Europe recognized him as the head of the OTO. So what did he do? He came to America. he set up his own branch of the OTO, and it was the only branch that survived the war, because the old OTO of Europe had died off, was been killed by the Nazis. Well, Crowley's version of it was he had been initiated just enough to learn the symbolism, but not enough to understand the application. So he started interpreting a lot of things literally, as people do when they haven't learned the deeper meaning. This is what happened with Christianity early on. Christianity was a symbolic system that had layers to it. And the first layer was the physical story, and then there were deeper levels that story taught. Same with the story of Moses. Well, this is what happened with Crowley. He learned the esoteric system, but he interpreted things literally that were symbolic. For example, within alchemy, there are when an herb has been digested in a solution, it's called a menstruum. And it's because it looks like menstruum. Or when the mana has been extracted, or the secret salts have been extracted out of an experiment, it's called, sometimes referred to as the semen of nature, because it looks like semen as when it's first made. Doesn't mean it is that. That's what it looks like.
Right.
Well, Crowley had been exposed to these ideas, but he didn't know how to make the processes. And so he created his own system of sex magic. He took his own perversions, and he started, he thought it was literal menstruum and literal semen, and he created sex rites around this, not understanding and he took the Gnostic story and grafted it onto his sex magic.
I see.
And so he created his own system, which to this day still exists as its own system. Thelema, yeah. Yeah, which just means will.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought he was all about imposing your will, and that ultimately, now where he was right was he believed that ultimately it wasn't about your will, it was about thine will be done, right? The will of the Christos, the universal consciousness. But he didn't frame it that way. It became more about imposing your personal will, hedonistic will, and he set up these. He took these Gnostic myths and these alchemical ideas, he perverted them, whether he probably unknowingly, because he didn't understand the true processes and the true myth. Created a sex magic cult, and that's what it exists to this day. So Crowley isn't recognized officially within Freemasonry because he was a clandestine Freemason. Yet there are some Freemasons who have involved themselves in Thelema and value the works of Crowley. Crowley was a good compiler of esoteric information. From my perspective, he just didn't understand it properly. And from anybody who's done a deep study of even his Book of the Law, which is now held up as a Thelemic Bible. When Crowley first wrote that, he didn't even think it was that special. He put it aside and basically put it in a closet for years, and then years later found it again and was like, oh, this would make a good Bible for the Thelemic system. So, I mean, it's not like it was that much of a revelation to him when he first made it. Mm. And there's a lot of followers of Crowley and Thelema that are going to really hate me for saying all this, but that's really the system there. And so I look at him as a misinformed Freemason who was into magic, and whose ego, he tried to take over the Golden Dawn. William Butler Yeats was one of the people who kept him from taking over the Golden Dawn. Then he tried to take over Amorc. It's the ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, back in the 30s, and they wouldn't let him take over that. And so, but then he was able to take over and create his own system of the OTO, after Theodore Royce died. But it was his own system. It was very different from the original system of the OTO.
Right.
So.
That makes sense. Okay, the last thing I want to ask you, because you have a flight to catch shortly.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how does this worldview, and ultimately, what is the Templar perspective, what does it have to say about aliens or
sure
these types of like UFO sightings or things like that? Like, what is the position there?
Templars have been studying UFOs since the beginning. One of the texts that the Templar Order found was the Book of Enoch, which describes a UFO encounter. But in fact, in Germany, there's a painting that was commissioned by Frederick, the Duke of Württemberg, who was the Grand Master of the Templar Order in Germany that the Rosicrucian Order came out of. And this painting still exists, and it shows all of the understanding from the Neometria, this book that described the Kabbalistic, Gnostic, and alchemical knowledge that the Templars had brought back. But it also shows UFOs, flying discs in the sky, with angels pushing these flying discs in the sky. Well, that was from 1598. So, I mean, that's how long the Templar Order have been looking at it. There's other Templars like Nicholas Roerich, who was the one who told Franklin Delano Roosevelt to put the Great Seal on the $1 bill. He was a Russian mystic, and he had done excavations, he'd done studies in Asia, in particular, Afghanistan, into India, even into Tibet, long before most people. This was back in the early 1930s. He warned of the Nazi movement. He's the one who helped Henry Wallace, who was FDR's vice president, and prior to that, he was Secretary of Agriculture. He gave him Mongolian planning techniques to help stop the Dust Bowl here in the Americas. But he had learned of those in his travels in Asia. And there's a Nicholas Roerich Museum actually here in New York. But Nicholas Roerich, in his early writings, described seeing flying discs in Asia. And the natives referred to them as the flying ships of Solomon, which is interesting. There is a Ethiopian text known as the Kebra Nagas, which also talks about King Solomon's flying ship, which was powered off of manna. So, but Nicholas Roerich writes about seeing these flying discs in Asia, and they were called the ships of Solomon. And it was even believed that the mesas, there's certain mesas in Asia that were known as the thrones of Solomon, and that these mesas were where King Solomon would land his airships, which were these flying discs. So this was something, and Roerich was a Templar. And so these are something the Templar Order's been studying for long before Kenneth Arnold ever talked about UFOs. Now, unfortunately, it's also something that the Nazis were studying, And that's part of why they were trying to create their what was known as their Bell program.
The Die Glocke.
Die Glocke, yeah, which was this flying craft that was may have also been a time traveling device. Once you understand that there is no real time, and that time and space are malleable, these crafts could be popping in and out of time and space. In fact, Templar, the word Templar comes from Templi, which means time. And it's the markage of time. Monuments were created to mark time in space. Sion or Sion means place. If you ever heard of the Priory of Sion, it's the Priory of place, just as the Templar Order is the marking of time. So marking time and place is what ancient monuments, or even modern monuments, do when we make time capsules, or oftentimes there's cornerstones on buildings that are laid by Freemasons, and that they're time capsules that are in them, marking time and place. So these UFOs are really higher dimensional craft that come in and out of time and place. And it's all about marking time and place, and creating a craft that can navigate to time and place. And so it's our belief that these craft are not only interdimensional beings, the craft are interdimensional. We have no problem with the idea that they could come from other star systems, like Orion, as suggested in all of the ancient traditions around the world, and alluded to in The New Atlantis by Francis Bacon, with the flying craft that gave the technology to humanity.
Can they crash?
They can crash, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's our understanding that what they are is they're a craft that has an electromagnetic energy bottle, a plasma bottle around it, that is vibrating or spinning at really fast, which can allow the craft inside to become invisible to the naked eye, because the field around it is spinning so fast that it causes the light to bend around it, so you don't see it, or you see it as a distortion, some of a distortion, or you just see it as the plasma energy around it. But that it's these are beings like ourselves, maybe some of them from the past, maybe some of them from other star systems, that come here to help try to direct humanity. Even the original Archon maybe was one of these beings. Certainly the gods described in ancient myths were probably these beings. And that they originally created humanity, according to some myths, to mine gold.
Mm-hmm.
To other myths, we were created to become gardeners or custodians of this planet, and to take care of the animals that were brought here, with the idea that maybe some of our animals were brought here from other planets. And that this is like a big zoo, and it's our job to tend to it and to take care of it, and we're not doing a very good job.
Yeah.
And that's part of why they're showing up again right now. Maybe to help remind us of, who we really are and where we come from and where we're going. And that as we evolve in our technology and we evolve in our spiritual understanding, we can enter into a galactic community of others. But we need to prove ourselves first. And we're not doing a very good job of that.
Right.
Because we can't even get along with each other. So why should we be allowed to go into space where there could be other interdimensional beings, traveling and working with each other? We're busy threatening each other down here with nuclear, blowing each other up. And they're not going to allow that in space.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. This is you're giving me a lot to think about and a lot to research as a growing up as a Catholic and as a Catholic now.
Sure.
The sort of the idea of Gnosticism is difficult for me to jump into.
Yeah.
But I find the perspective fascinating, and I think a lot of the tenets of oneness and some type of undergirding consciousness to be really palatable and I don't know, something that I'm going to think about a lot more.
Well, Roman Catholicism has a lot of beautiful aspects to it. And even what does Catholic mean? It means universal, right? And I will tell you, the stages of alchemy, from an alchemical standpoint, they go through 3 different color changes: black, red, and then white. And it repeats this several times, but these are the main color. This is the reason why these were the colors of ancient Egypt. These were the colors of Atlantis. But they're also the reason why within the Roman Church, what does the priest wear? Black. What do the cardinals wear? Red. What does the Pope wear? White. Right? And there are allusions to these alchemical processes even within Ash Wednesday, for example, where they burn the palms from Palm Sunday to ashes, and then what do they do with it?
Anoint it on the forehead.
Anoint it on the third eye, the Nazar. So it makes you a Nazarene. It makes your third eye open. The salts from the ashes is the mana. And that's what opens that third eye. So the illusions are there. The church may have forgotten, where it comes from, but it's all there. And it's become, the church itself has become a control mechanism. And it's by having you believe that there's original sin, that you're born into this world already defected, and that only they can control your salvation of how to get out of this world. And the difference between Gnosticism and the church is only that the Gnostics don't believe in original sin. You're already born here with a spark of God within you. It's just been buried through all kinds of psychological damage. And it's in the control systems of this world. And once we learn to see past all that, that's where gnosis comes from. And gnosis, or that divine knowledge, is the salvation. And that Jesus being born again, or the whole idea of being born again, is just reincarnation. And that when Jesus was speaking as an exemplar, he was speaking as the universal consciousness, which is something we can all access.
I see.
So you don't need a priest to get there. So one has become a kind of a control mechanism. The other is recognizing the inherent divinity already within us. And that's the only difference. But the church still has, and I say the Roman church, it still has lots of beautiful symbolism in it. It's all there. It's just been forgotten. I mean, show me where Ash Wednesday is in the Bible.
Right.
It's not there. But it's a beautiful rite within the Roman Church. It's because there have been alchemists and there have been Gnostic leaders within the Roman Church at different times who have influenced in ways its symbolism and its ritual, even if the church itself has forgotten its origins in that regard.
I see. I'm going to leave it to Jesus Christ, all right? I'm just going to keep on following him.
Yeah,
we're going to see where that takes me.
That's the way to go.
Tim, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's do this again soon.
All right, sounds great.
Hey guys, if you love conspiracies and hypothetical history, well, I want to invite you to check out Signal 33. This is a companion pod to our podcast here at camp. It's made and edited by the same team that runs all of our shows, and I choose the topics every single week. So check it out, subscribe, and start the dialogue in the comment section.